All right, our guest today is Laura Estes. Laura and I met in 1991 or two, and it doesn't seem like that long ago, but I guess it was. Uh, I was smart enough at the time to hire her as the assistant band director at Columbus High School, and I don't remember, Laura, the number of students we had when you first came to Columbus. Do you remember?
Uh, there were two bands worth of students. I think it was the first year that you split from one band into two.
It was that 92?
That would have been school year 93,
Three.
94. That first school year there at Columbus High, but I had been in Columbus for a year at another
And
school.
and then I went to Shaw as the assistant principal, and you took over the band, and it had grown to what, about 200 and something?
Definitely. I mean, three bands worth plus. So
Yeah.
it was getting large.
What what began your band career? Where were you and what grade were you in?
When I started in band,
Yeah.
uh, well, I started piano when I was 8, and that was and still is my main instrument. And then I joined band just as soon as I could when I was growing up. And that particular year, it was my seventh grade year. So
Where
I was a
was that,
seventh.
Laura?
That was in that was at Nova Elementary School. I was a graduate of the Nova schools in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. I had forgotten about that. That's right. Now, what made teaching band so interesting to you that you chose it as your profession?
Um, I think for me, I just loved it so much that I wanted to give the same experience and more to another generation. I just believed in it so much. And that's what I did.
Can you tell me some of the things that you remember band doing for you?
Oh yeah, it was I when I joined band, I had a large group of friends already because I had gone through all of school with them and grew up with them. But then I just made more friends. Um, the I couldn't really put it into words back then, but as I've gotten older, I've been able to put this into words better. I loved piano, but it was a solitary thing. And what I loved about band was making music with others. And it was just a feeling that I couldn't quite put into words. And I love school. I always have loved learning in school. So, I enjoyed my other classes growing up, but there was just something about being in these music classes that at the time, I just couldn't put my finger on it, but I know now what it was. It was just making music and emotions with other people.
I've heard it described by some of my friends that being in a good high school band program is almost like being in a cult, only in a good way.
Maybe, maybe.
Where did you go to college, Laura?
Well, I started out at University of Florida, and then I transferred to Florida State. And so I received my bachelor's from Florida State. And then later on in the 80s, I got my master's from Georgia State.
So you went from being a gator to a gator hater.
I would never call myself a hater. It was a hard transition, let's
Oh, I
just
can
say.
imagine. I can imagine. Where did you
But
move to after, I'm sorry, where did you move to after you left Columbus?
I moved to Atlanta. I moved to Cobb County and have lived there here ever since.
What schools were you teaching in?
I became a middle school band director after I left Columbus. And so I taught at Mabry Middle School and then Daniel Middle School and Smitha Middle School, all in the Cobb school system.
Did you find a lot of difference between middle school and high school?
Yes and no. I mean, kids are kids, and some things just never change no matter how old you are. And then other things do. Of course, I went from a level 6 band program to teaching beginners level 1 stuff, and sometimes I found that quite amusing, but it was exactly what they needed, you know, at the time. So it was a transition for me, but I think I adapted pretty well.
I think you did too. Uh, who were some of your mentors?
Well, you were a mentor to me, and I still think of all the different things that I learned from you and from Nolan Bishop. May he rest in peace. And um, just different ways of dealing with people, with humans. And sometimes you just kind of put things in perspective for me, and I still think about those things today.
Well, thank
So
you.
just my career, that have helped or that I've observed and just learned from. I don't know if it's one or two people, but you were definitely one of them, you and Nolan.
Well, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Are you still teaching?
I am not teaching. I've officially retired from the school system, but I'm still teaching, when the directors call me in to do this or that. So I'm still running sectionals, or I'll run the occasional rehearsal, or I'll be a clinician someplace, but I'm not teaching on a daily basis where you create that really cool connection with students. You can create great connections in short amounts of times, but the day after day connections, that I'm not doing.
I was going to
It's
ask
sad.
you about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. It would be kind of hard just to walk into a bunch of kids that don't know you and you don't know, and you have to establish a connection pretty quickly.
Yes, yes. And so you just learn to do that. I think I've had over the years, I think that's gotten easier for me. That's definitely one of the things that has improved over the years. When I think back to early, early teaching years, but yeah, you have to learn how to do that pretty fast.
How did you transition to composition?
Oh gosh. Well, I never in my wildest dreams thought about being a composer. It was it wasn't anything that I dreamed about or thought about. Um, in fact, I had two like weird, not great experiences with it when I was very young. I just didn't think I was talented with it. I didn't even want to do it. And what ended up becoming my final year of teaching, we were doing a superhero concert for the spring concert. And I had 16 double reads. And all of the kids in the all of the kids in the program were participating in small ensembles, large ensembles, and I was desperately trying to find something. I mean, how often do you have 16 double reads? And so not only can you not find great music for double reads anyway, then to find superhero themes. So I was like, okay, I will try and write something. And so I broke copyright laws and I arranged John Williams's Superman from, the heroic Superman theme. It's like the opposite of a double read, right? So I thought that I'd retire before having to learn music writing software. I was still doing things by hand because I didn't have to do it that much. So I downloaded some free software. I taught it to myself for these double reads who were so sweet, deserved to be able to play something at that concert. And you know what? It came out pretty good. I surprised myself. It was a big hit. They got to play not just on their concert, but on the 6th grade concert, the 7th and the 8th grade concert for the spring concert. And I was like, maybe I have a talent for this. And that's what did it. And that's what made me decide to take a leap of faith and retire. That was year 36. It was the end of the school year. I had plans to come back. I didn't know when I was going to retire, but I retired and I started right then. So that's what happened.
Where do you get your inspiration for the music you write?
Just all different things. Like the first piece that I wrote, it's called Kvetcher's Surprises in Controversial Time. And I just thought I'd write a march or something. And then I would, I like marches and I thought I might be good at writing marches. So that's kind of what I thought. And so I had some ideas for these marches. And the inspiration for at least the first one was I wanted to write not an anti-march because I do like marches, but I wanted to write the opposite of a march. And so this march has time changes in it. It has no repeats. There are no horn offbeats. They're just the bassoons get the counter melody. They don't have to play with the tubas, things like that. So it was just like hopefully a funny march, which turned out to be funny. And so like that was my inspiration, like for that piece to just write something that either was going to be really well received or really not well received.
So it was exactly the opposite of everything you've ever seen in a march.
Exactly.
That's a great idea in itself. Now I saw where you wrote Walking on Air. I love that title. Where did that come from?
Well, I was writing a piece and I kept having that feeling. I wasn't sure what the title should be on that one, but it was in the middle of the pandemic and I just wanted to write a really happy piece. And I kept trying to find a one-word title. And I'm looking and I kept typing in like to a thesaurus, walking on air. And my friend said, my best friend, who is a composer, she said, why can't that be the title? And I was like, oh, okay, that could actually be a great title. And so that's how I came up with that title. But it was a like a happy piece. Again, the opposite of how we're all feeling in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, at that time, I think all of us needed something happy to listen to. How many pieces have you written?
Uh, I think there's 16 published pieces, and I have um, 5 or 6 coming out. I think 6 coming out in the in the spring, in May.
Okay, so
I've come
do you have
more in the pipeline.
do you have some you're working on now?
I'm just getting ready to start a piece now. I caught me like right in between. I just completed a level 1 piece, and then it's called Ancient Badlands. So
That's great.
that's coming, but that'll be in a year. That'll be in a year. It'll come out. But I completed that, and I'm getting ready to start. I've 2 commissions in the pipeline, so getting ready to start on those.
Now tell me about your publisher.
My publisher is Excelsior Music. Larry Clark is the president of the company, and he is, as you probably know, a very well-respected, fantastic composer, educator. His music is just perfect for young bands and beyond. And I, when I submitted my piece to him, the first piece, I didn't realize it was his company. It was called Excelsior, and I just knew that was a publishing company. That's all I knew. I studied it a little bit because I before I submitted a piece, I wanted to make sure that they would publish, that they've already published, similar type pieces, quirky. That first one was really quirky, and did a little research, but probably the largest piece of research that I did not do was find out whose company it was. And so I submitted it to Excelsior and heard back really fast. I have to say, I was shocked. And anyway, so that's how that happened.
Are
Excuse me.
are most of your pieces geared toward middle school difficulty level?
Yes, middle school and young high school. But some of my, I've got a couple of level 3 and a 3.5 piece, and a level 4 or full orchestra piece coming out. So I'm starting to branch out a little more. But I've heard other composers say, the ones I think that write for high school a lot or the college level, they find it hard to write for the younger levels. And I think I'm the opposite. And so I'm working to, write more difficult music. I think I can. I have it in my head. So I just need to get it on paper and see
Well,
how that works.
it would seem to me that it would be more difficult to write for younger students simply because you have to know in great detail the limitations of each instrument before you can write effectively for that age.
That's very true. And it's so much more than, like, let's take a 0.5 piece, a level half um, piece. So for the youngest of students, many times they just use the first 6 notes of a B flat concert scale. And so people think, okay, I'll just use those first 6 notes. But it's more than that, because like take the clarinet, for example. Within those first six notes, you can do a clarinet E and a clarinet A. But let's say you want to slur from clarinet E to A. I don't know that that's going to fly
No,
easily.
not for that age.
And so I think so there is just so much layers and layers of knowledge. Not that you can't learn. I mean, anybody can learn it, about the instruments in great detail so that you can be successful writing at that grade level. And so I feel confident. I feel very, very confident with the band instruments, um, to be able to write at that level. So far so good.
Now, are you planning on continuing this vocation?
Yes, yes,
So you not only enjoy it, but you've actually even made it productive.
yes. And I can't believe I'm saying that. But yeah.
That's great. So, um, you see yourself continuing in this vein for as long as you want to, I guess.
I guess as long as I have my ears and as long as I can walk, maybe, so that I can get to a podium.
But
But
you
yeah,
said you are going to branch out into more difficult uh, pieces.
yeah, but I'm not thinking in terms of, I don't want to say never, but right now I'm looking at trying to write in addition to the youngest levels to branch out into the fours and fives.
So you're
So,
not
but
looking for Carmina Burana yet.
oh my gosh, no, I don't know how to do that. But I don't have a desire to do that either. I mean, that could change, but my desire right now is to write really uh, good quality educational music, especially for the youngest, because it's getting better and changing. But for most of my career, it was just hard to really find quality music. I mean, I felt so bad for my bassoons sometimes. Even my seventh grade bassoons would come to me like, why do we have to play with the tubas and the bass clarinets? And it hit me like, I don't know. You do not have to, I read something. And so I think about those things like why do we have to have certain instrument doublings? I mean, I understand again at the youngest levels, because a lot of bands, you know, they won't have all of the instruments. So the trombones may be their bass instrument. And so the very youngest levels, you want to make sure that is a bass sound. But why can't different instruments have the melody and really cool harmonies? And so that's what I try to do.
That's seeing a need and filling it to the best of your ability. That's pretty perceptive on your part. Now, you mentioned how much band did for you when you were growing up. Are you do you consider yourself an advocate for inclusion of music in school curricula?
Oh my gosh, yes. That should be the number one thing that is taught before anything else, because everything comes from it. Everything.
I saw some research a couple of weeks ago that band students, instrumental students, actually, not just band, um, that take 3 or more years of instruction in band score as much as 200 points higher on standardized tests than students without band instruction. So it seems to me that the answer to the age-old question that all directors ask, do smart kids take music or does music make you smarter? The answer is yes.
Yes, I agree.
And you found that generally the kids you deal with are more perceptive than those that might not be involved in music classes in their school.
Well, if you, let's say you meet um, kids who have already been in band a couple of years and older, then yes, that is true. But you need to look at a sixth grade beginning band class when they first come in. They're just like everybody else. You
Sure.
know, they don't know the rules of the, they don't know the etiquette of a rehearsal. And so they have to be taught. And and then I think that that perception comes from that. You know, there's just a certain set of expectations. And the expectations of band, and I would say orchestra students also, are just so much more, just so much more than just your average class. And so they rise to the occasion and they become perceptive.
I think teachers have to rise to that occasion also. You know, I had a friend of mine mentioned a couple of weeks ago that when he first went into a sixth grade beginner band class, the first thing he told them was, I want everybody to open your instrument cases. Well, they did, but they didn't have them right side up. And, you know, the flutes and the clarinets and the saxophones, some of them spilled out into the floor. So you have to rethink what it means to be a beginning band student and go through that process yourself before you can teach it to others, to students.
Yeah. I mean, you have to really break things down. And not just opening your cases, but where are those cases placed on the floor before you open them, and how did you get to your seat
Yeah.
without stumbling on things and touching a music stand? And it's a whole bunch of things. But yeah, and then we teach it, and if you don't teach that, then you don't get control of your class. it,
Well,
it, it just goes out in so many directions like the spokes of a wheel.
you're right. And you know, the old saying about if you don't correct it, then you are teaching it, whether you mean to or not.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, what what would you ideally like students to experience when they play one of your pieces?
I want them to, well, first of all, I want them to enjoy the total piece of music, but I want them to have something to look forward to for their own individual parts. As you know, I played bari sax. And back in the day, if we had four eighth notes in a row, that became our favorite piece
Sure.
because, you know, there were not a lot of challenges, at least in the, I guess, the music that I played in high school, and very few opportunities to have the melody or to be featured in some way. And so I I really try to take very, very special care to make sure that every instrument section has something special that they can hang on to in that piece of music, including percussion. Percussion section, you know, they're rhythmically and counting, I mean, they're just going to be ahead of the wind players. And so I just write everything one grade level of difficulty to harder for the percussionists and just try and keep them busy.
Yeah.
Like this last piece, one of the 0.5s that's coming out for me this year, I'm like looking at these rests. You have to build in extended rests because the poor little muscles on these little kids, beginners, they just, they can't play from start to finish a piece. And so I'm looking at the extended rests, middle school band director. What is going to happen? They're not going to be engaged. They're going to be looking around the room. They're not going to count. They're going to miss their entrance, all kinds of things. So I built in some clapping, rhythmic clapping, which they're going to have to count so that there's no more than 2 measures where anybody's counting any extended breaths. They're either playing or clapping something. And so it's like those kinds of things. I just want them to enjoy the piece and want just like you said, you teach. Sometimes the things you teach are, inadvertently you teach things that you didn't want to teach. And so I try to think of those kinds of things when I'm
That's a
writing.
great solution. Yeah, because we've all, felt a little bit sorry for percussionists sometimes counting 187 measures of rest and then there's a cymbal crash.
Yeah, there's none of that in my music. And I don't know that a lot of writers write like that anymore. Because it's not just me. I think there's a lot of awareness with the people who are composing for young band now. It's way more interesting. There's a piece by Randall Standridge called "Too Much Percussion." It's cute.
That's great. Well, you know what? I remember in junior high and high school, the different instruments judged whether they liked the piece or not according to what they had to play during that piece. And I think that's still true for a lot of kids today. If you write something interesting, they will be interested.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great reminder for anybody that's looking to compose for early bands or middle school bands. So, what do you think the 10th grade Laura would think about the Laura that's the nationally recognized composer now?
I don't know about all that.
Now, don't make that
Um,
face because you know it's true.
I, I still can't believe it. So, 10th grade Laura. Well, I know, I don't know. If somebody had told me this back in 10th grade, I wouldn't have believed them because in 10th grade, I had my Eleanor Rigby issue. Do you want to hear what that was?
Yeah.
So it's my fear, my Eleanor Rigby fear. So I told you my best friend is a composer, and she's been composing for a long time. We've been best friends since we were 8 years old. And so she had already been composing, and we're like ninth and 10th grade. And I thought, well, I can do this. And I wrote this piece. And I said, what do you think? And she looks at it and she looks me, just dead in the eye. That's Eleanor Rigby. And I was like, no, it's not. She's like, yes, it is. And I knew it was. I knew it was mostly Eleanor Rigby. And so that was it. I mean, so you're going to tell 10th grade Laura, who recomposes Eleanor Rigby. So, no, but that is my fear, actually. And so even now, I come up with melodies and to be sure that they're mine and nobody else's. I keep changing them constantly while I'm writing so that whatever I came up with in the beginning, that melody, it's so far from it by the time I'm done that I know it's mine.
Well, there are only so many notes to go around, and it doesn't matter what choice you make, somebody has done it before.
I don't know. My editor says that about 6 note pieces.
Yeah, yeah, that's right too. You do
And then,
you remember what composers used to call it when they stole from other composers? Quod libe.
what? Say again?
Quod libe.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Anyway, composers have been borrowing from each other for many, many years. So don't feel bad about Eleanor Rigby. If you're going to steal from somebody, the Beatles are as good as anybody, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, you covered pretty much everything
Where
other than this is wonderful.
where can directors find your music? I know you said Excelsior.
Yeah, but I have a new website.
Oh,
So they just
okay.
type in my name, Laura Estes music.com.
Simple enough to remember. Well,
Come right
listen,
up.
I want to thank you for taking your time today, and I look forward to hearing some more of your pieces. I really enjoyed listening to some of the groups that have done some of them on the Excelsior preview site they send out with new pieces and things. And congratulations on your success. It might seem newfound, but it took a lot of years to understand how these middle school kids operate and how you can effectively reach those kids through music. And you've done obviously a wonderful job doing that. So Laura, it's great to see you again. Thank you very much. And if you ever need me, you know where I am.
I do know where you are, and thank you so much. This has been great, and I hope all of our former students can find